About a year ago, JL Audio released their brand new component speaker line, the C6. With that release, we saw a new 6.5-inch woofer and a 1-inch silk dome tweeter. But everyone wondered, would we eventually see the addition of a mid-range driver to the C6 lineup, allowing for a full 3-way component set? A few months back, we got the answer to that question with an independent 2 3/4-inch mid-range driver being added, the C6-275CM. At that point, we had options for our car audio system design that we could choose within the C6 line. We could either get a 2-way component system, which includes passive crossovers and allows us to drive both the woofer and tweeter with 1 channel of power, or we could run each of these drivers active, with the component tweeter, mid, and woofer all being available independently. Great for flexible system design or if you happen to need a replacement. But we couldn't get a full 3-way component system that included passive crossovers until now. This is the brand new C6-653 3-way component speaker system. In this video, I want to dive into everything that is included in the kit, discuss some of the engineering design behind these component speakers, and take a closer look at some of their very unique features. If you're new here, I'm Mark. Welcome to CarAudioFabrication. Let's begin with an unboxing. Here it is, my friends, within this rather large box, the C6-653 3-way component speaker system. Open up our lid here. And first off, they've given us warranty information along with the owner's manual. On top of the packaging, there is a box here that has something inside. Several different bags here. Mounting hardware and electrical connectors for the tweeters. Also mounting hardware and electrical connectors for, of course, the mid-range and woofers. And additional mounting hardware for things like the passive crossovers. Finally, some JL Audio logos. These can be used on the grills that protect the speakers, but I like that they're included separately because that way we can orient them as needed, or we could even use these elsewhere in the install. Let's get this out of the way here, and we are going to see all of the different various components that make up this 3-way system. A quick side note here, I think that this packaging is actually kind of unique. Usually there's different layers inside the packaging that you need to go through to get all of the different components. This is actually kind of nice that you can really just grab each different component individually as needed throughout your install. Now for the tweeters, they've given us 2 different styles of mounting cup. We've got this flush mount style cup where you would cut to this diameter and you would sink this into a panel, and then they also have this surface mount cup. Being as there are 2 tweeters included in this set, we of course have 2 of each. Next, we have the tweeters themselves. These are the C6 1-inch component tweeters. These are silk dome tweeters, and we're going to talk much more about the engineering and design of the tweeters and each of the drivers in a minute here. So just a brief overview for now. You'll notice that these have a protective grill that is permanently attached, and you'll also notice that these have the wiring already attached along with some of the electrical connectors. The wiring on these is just over 34 inches long, and don't forget that you could always attach additional wiring if needed. And these are designed with this notch system on the side that locks with this notch that is on each of the different mounting options. Next, we have the C6 component woofer. This is a 6.5-inch woofer, but along with the 2 woofers in this kit, they've also given us this plastic ring, which allows us to add this protective grill. Now, by no means are you required to use this. You could use the factory OEM grill, but it is nice that they've included it, and you can see this indentation here, which allows us to add that logo. Next, we have the C6-275CM. This is the component mid-range. Now, right off the bat, a super cool feature about this mid-range driver, you can see right now it is installed into this mounting flange, but if we would like, we can actually twist this off and remove it. And if we take a close look here, we can see that the edge of that is actually threaded. The reason that this is nice is they've given us a couple of different other mounting solution options here. These are actually speaker adapters to fit a variety of different OEM locations, including GM vehicles, Toyota, Ram, and many different European vehicles. As you can imagine, installation into these rings is incredibly easy. All we need to do is just carefully line it up here give it a twist, and twist it into place. This mounting design is extremely advantageous for mounting into OEM locations because there's no longer a large mounting flange around the outside of the driver here. This is low profile, and as you can imagine, installing this driver into this adapter ring is extremely easy to do. So whether you're looking to integrate into an OEM application or you're going for more of an aftermarket design with the more standard mounting flange that has holes for fasteners, they've got you covered. Now with the OEM adapters, you're going to be using the OEM speaker grill, but for aftermarket applications, they've got you covered there as well with an included grill. You would mount all your mounting hardware and then snap this into place. And once again, they've given us an indentation to add that JL Audio logo. Now finally, with this being a component speaker system, we need a way to divide the signal that is going to each of those different speakers if we want to run passive, and these are our passive crossover network. Let's remove this protective film, take off the cover here, and you can see all of the crossover components in all their glory. If you're not familiar with what a passive crossover does, this allows us to have one channel of power coming from our head unit or from our amplifier, so we can have the positive and negative signal of the speaker wire, and that signal can then be divided up into the 6 different wires that are needed for the 3 different speakers, thus providing the tweeter with the high frequency information so that it's only playing the high musical notes, the mid-range with the mid musical information frequencies, and then the woofer with the low end frequency information. What's awesome about this passive crossover is it does give us some options for adjusting our system. You can see right here we can control the mid-range level, in other words, that 2 3/4 inch driver, we can leave it at the reference level. We can add 2 dBs of output, or we can remove 2 dBs of output, or even remove 4 dBs of output if we need to kind of tone it down a little bit. A similar example here for the tweeter output level, again with the reference plus 2 dB, minus 2 dB, and minus 4 dB. A good example of this would be, let's say in its installed location, the tweeter is closer to your listening position, so you're finding it to be a bit bright, maybe a bit overbearing initially. You could easily jumper this down as needed to adjust it. With these, just a reminder, if you're running passive and using these, you're going to need 2 channels of output, and you can send that to your left set of speakers and your right set of speakers, and those 2 channels are divided up into 6 total channels. Or if you would like to run this full system active, you're going to need 6 channels of total amplified power, 2 for the tweeters, 2 for the mid-ranges, and 2 for the woofers. As a reminder, like I said in the beginning of the video, each of these drivers are available individually, which I love seeing done. This allows us far more flexibility in our system design since we don't have to buy in pairs, and is a really nice feature to have. In fact, this individual availability is something that is not only in these high-end C7 and C6 lineups, but is also available in the C3 and C2 lines. Now spec-wise, overall as a system, the rated power for these is around 100 watts RMS, with a recommendation of amplifier power between 25 and 150 watts RMS. And keep in mind that rating is for each set of speakers. So with that power range there, you could technically power these off of factory power or a head unit, but personally I'd recommend an amplifier for the best results. And with that power band there, you have a lot of flexibility and options. These have a moderate sensitivity of about 87 dB at 1 watt at 1 meter. So these aren't as sensitive as what we see in the C1 line, which is designed to be driven by lower power amplifiers, but that's because in speaker design, there's always a trade-off, and generally speaking, some design features that allow for a better sounding speaker often result in less efficiency. Again, that's why I recommend that you power these with ample power in order to achieve their full potential. The rated frequency response of these is 53 Hz up to 21 kHz plus or minus 3 dB, so these play all the way up to the top end of our hearing range of frequencies, and plenty low to provide solid low end even in a system without a subwoofer. Although I'd recommend pairing a subwoofer with these as well. Overall, the total system has a nominal impedance of 4 ohms, making it easily pair with OEM applications and also pairing with virtually every multi-channel amplifier out there. What really makes the C6 component system special though is the engineering that went into these speakers. First off, the 6.5-inch woofer, you're going to see a lot of the same design technology that is built into the flagship for JL Audio, the C7 6.5-inch woofer. You're going to notice that there is a speaker terminal on each side of the woofer. That's advantageous because that way you have a perfectly balanced system with the wire lead being woven into the spider of the driver. Next up, you've got forged and machined motor plates along with DMA optimized geometries to create linear motor force under power, which leads to outstanding mid-bass impact, linearity, and most of all, low distortion. On the spider here, that is this yellow part on the inside that is part of the suspension, it's designed to be a large diameter and have a linear profile, allowing for outstanding excursion capabilities. Now the center cap here is designed to optimize the high frequency response of the woofer, which is going to allow for a seamless transition to a tweeter in a 2-way application or to the mid-range speaker in a 3-way application. Inside, there's an oversized voice coil for extended power handling capability, which minimizes thermal compression and distortion at higher listening levels. The C6 woofer also has a cast alloy frame, which is very similar to the C7 woofer, and it's designed with elevated frame cooling. The cone material is a mineral-filled polypropylene cone, which is quite common for JL Audio. It's a very light material, which allows the speaker to be more efficient, but it's also very rigid, which prevents any distortion within the audible range of the driver. Next, taking a look at the C6 tweeter, this is an edge-driven silk dome design. Silk dome tweeter designs typically deliver smooth, high-frequency performance with excellent off-axis response and damping. Now, the neodymium motor on the backside here delivers high magnetic flux from a compact motor design, and inside there is ferrofluid cooling. This improves the damping and reliability of the tweeter and allows for a smooth response. On the C6 mid-range driver, they've got machined and forged motor plates, which are of course also going to use JL Audio's DMA optimized geometries, which create a linear motor force under power, leading to outstanding mid-range reproduction, linearity, and low distortion. Again, you'll notice that same balanced speaker terminal design with a terminal on each side. And once again for the spider, a flat linear profile which promotes linear compliance and outstanding excursion capability. Motor-wise, on the inside of the mid-range driver, there's a robust voice coil construction, forced cooling, and optimized moving assembly components which maintain low power compression at higher listening levels. If you're curious about running these in an active application, these have a designed frequency bandwidth of about 350 Hz up to 4.8 kHz, depending upon the crossover slopes that you choose. What about the performance of these? I've had a chance to evaluate each of these speakers individually, and first off, let's talk about the woofer. On the woofer, you could expect great mid-bass performance. The DMA optimization that JL Audio uses really shines through here. With the C6 woofer having so much of the same technology as the high-end C7s, these play very linearly and have extreme accuracy. The mid-range is the heart and soul of any 3-way component system, and in this case, it really helps establish the clarity and realism of the sound that you're listening to. With high-end speakers like the C6 mid-range, you really start to hear new details in recordings that were always there, you just missed it before on lesser speakers that kind of gloss over that detail. The C6 mid can handle both delicate passages in music along with forceful crescendos without any distortion issues. The C6 tweeters are very smooth sounding due to, of course, that silk dome design. And with the larger size, I feel like you don't have to overdrive these and push them to their limits in order to get dynamic output. In my experience, not fatiguing at all to listen to, nice and smooth. Overall, an incredible sounding component speaker system, which makes installation a breeze and sounds absolutely flawless. If you'd like to learn more about the JL Audio C6 component speaker system, be sure to check out the links down in the video description. And if you'd like to see some builds where I use JL Audio gear, definitely be sure to check out the other videos here on my channel. A thank you to Garmin for sponsoring this video so that we could take a closer look, and a big thanks to you guys for tuning in and watching.